So I'm back now, as you can see, and from the old place. And yeah, it was quite an interesting trip. I sold one synth and got another one. More about that in future videos or maybe blog posts or something like that. But anyway, today I'm going to talk about trackers and music trackers specifically. And I'm quite, pleasantly surprised that there's quite a lot of you who have requested it, saying, please talk about them, please talk about the different ones and all that. So I've been using trackers most of my life, since my early teens, and that is on the Amiga. I started around 1996 properly writing music. That's on Soundtracker Pro 2. Before that, I did try to use Protracker, and because I really wanted to make music. It's just like the want was there, the passion was there, but I just couldn't, figure out how to use Protracker. To be fair, I was around 10 or something, this kind of age, so it's a little difficult for a child to understand that. But later on, what taught me how to use a tracker was not looking at tutorials, there wasn't the internet back then or anything like this, but actually the interface of Soundtracker Pro 2. And that I will go into a little later on how it managed to do that. But it's not that I don't like Protracker, I do. I could understand it now, after understanding the concept of the tracker and how it all works. So I have Soundtracker Pro 2 to thank. And the fact that I got my Polyend Tracker here, and that within like 2 hours or something like this of receiving it, I created a track on it. Because I know how trackers work. I know how, that's the initial bit of knowledge. On Soundtracker Pro 2, most of my music is on there. A little later on, when I sold my Amiga in 2005, this kind of a time, 2004, 2005, I started writing music on the PC, but on MsMadLemon. And that I used, which is now called OpenMPT, but back then MsMadLemon, I'm used to calling it that. I wrote music on that. As you can hear the emotion in the music. I think I realized I made a huge mistake by selling my Amiga, because it's just there's a lot of soul to the system. Now, moving on to the comments, right? The couple of comments which I received. One of them was quite a bit of an assumption on me. I'll give you the screenshot. And I laughed a bit when I got it because it was very ridiculous. I won't lie. This guy said, okay, what's the advantage of Soundtracker Pro 2? And I said, okay, I want to save this for the video because I want to properly talk about it, I was planning for this video. So he's just like, oh, so it's basically it's his face that covers most of the screen. You'll be happy to know that when they redid this version, to another version, they removed his face and all. It's just really snotty, and I'm just like, what? You think I like Soundtracker Pro 2 over Protracker because I fancy some pixelated guy? Please. First of all, I'm not a teenager, but even when I was back then, it takes more than a few, pixels for me to like a man. I'm not easy. I'm really not easy. So his face comes on straight away. When you click on edit, it disappears instantly. Life's not that simple that you've got in your head. I'm sorry to disappoint. Anyway. Now, before I start showing you the different trackers in more detail, in a nutshell, the main parts of a tracker are the structure. You have your blocks where you create your music onto, and you then program the blocks in sequence with one another in the part of the tracker called the pattern or block sequencer. I was able to learn how to use a music tracker with Soundtracker Pro 2 by simply watching it play mods. I couldn't do this so much with Protracker or OctaMED because you have to sort of dig more into it to get to the pattern or block sequencer, as it's not really visible other than merely displaying the position value. I remember as a young child the tracker part making sense, but the concept of stringing blocks together just wasn't there in my mind. So I kept thinking the question to myself, why does the tracker keep ending? Little did I know there were separate blocks which were sequenced together. In Soundtracker Pro 2, the interface is set out where you can watch everything happening, the tracker itself as well as the pattern sequencer in full detail. The interface is very intuitive and simple to understand. Just to be clear, Soundtracker Pro 2 and Protracker are not the same. Protracker is standard Amiga mod format. Soundtracker Pro 2 has its own proprietary format, just like OctaMED has its own. As a comparison, I will now go into a little more detail on the interfaces of different trackers. Right, so firstly, let's have a look at what you all know most, right? And that's Protracker. Well, some of you know OctaMED, of course, but Protracker. Now this is the first which I saw, and not in this form. I saw it in the form of Noise Tracker, and it used to be Noise Tracker, and the old Soundtracker versions. They all looked like this with the same setup, right? Now, as a 10-year-old, 11-year-old, actually even earlier on, I asked my brother because he used to listen to music via this, and I was intrigued by it every time he used to listen to mods, and I was just like, I want to create. I told him that, and I must have been about 8 years old or something like this. So I was just like, show me how to do it. So he's just like, well, he knew how to load a sample. He did that, and I kind of messed around with it, and I played on the keyboard, the typing keyboard. But it obviously at that age, 7, 8 years old, I'm not gonna get this. So now I know how to use trackers. I know how to do everything. There's a few things that still confuse me a little bit, and that's because my lack of familiarity with it. So position 0, block 1, and then you want to add more, right? So you insert, there you go, insert more. It's no longer position 0. That's annoying. Maybe you have to take it up and down a little bit. Okay, there. And if I were to do that, let's see how this is working. It's just my lack of familiarity. I'm not like, this is no criticism of Protracker. I've only created one track or a couple of tracks in Protracker, and those were just like messing around before Soundtracker Pro 2. So let's see if, well, it moves fast. Let's see if we insert, yeah, okay, fine. So the inserting depends on where you are positioned, okay? So that's your position editor, right? And you can see that as you're playing it. There you go. So it's moved to position 6 now, once that block finished. And that's your next one. You have your sampler here, and then you deal with your samples, you sample new stuff, you load samples, the usual, right? So that's all good. You have your setup here. There is MIDI here, but you cannot seem to, okay, it seems like you cannot set the MIDI channel, so me pressing any key on this thing, it's on, isn't it? Yes, it is. Me pressing any key on this thing is not making any difference. One thing good about it is that it supports MIDI sync. So if I were to connect this to Polyend Tracker, right, and play, then that starts. So that is, I love that. Why can't Soundtracker Pro have that? The thing is, I love the look of this as well. I always have it. It's the classic, and part of me wants to create music on it because of that, right? And that's why, I still have like that love for it, and it somewhat looks like Soundtracker Pro-ish type of thing. It looks classic Amiga tracker, in other words. Now then, let's have a look at the other one, which I had a look at, which scared the freak out of me back then, as a child. And that one is OctaMED, and that was specifically OctaMED or MED back then. And I'd say OctaMED 4, below. 5 onwards is different. It's using intuition. 5 seems to be kind of like half there, not fully there. So you have this, your typical, you know, you have your patterns and positions. However, you can this time view them there. So insert that. But the problem with OctaMED, right, is the keyboard shortcuts are completely different to Protracker. It's like can I just like edit one? Oh, there we go. Right. Why do I have to? Oh, right. Okay, so that's the menu. Okay. It is overwhelming. I mean, if you're going around, fuffing around with stuff like this, I mean, that is a lot to take in, especially when you're like 10 years old, 11 years old, right? You create your blocks and then you kind of, you change the positions here. Sorry, you program your sequence of your blocks, yeah. But most people, they swear by this one, right? They swear by OctaMED Pro 4 and that's the last, they claim that that's the last good one. I agree somewhat, yeah. I do like the custom interface that they have. I like the fact that Rich is at a different opinion to this, by the way. He likes workbench intuition, yeah, because he came across another sort of Amiga tracker. He was listening. He loves listening to mods, right? And one time he searched YouTube for something. Oh my god! Shit! I'm destroying the place here. Anyway, the ball from my tracker ball came off. Anyway. What was I saying? And my entire freaking mixing console was like, I almost knocked it off the desk. Anyway, he's actually designing his own Linux interface at the moment. So, you know, he's quite into that. So he prefers that. He likes the fact that someone uses the Amiga intuition and, you know, he likes the look of it and everything. And many agree with him. I wouldn't say I'm totally opposed to that. I do like workbench intuition, but I believe that how do I word this? It has its advantages. It has its times that it's better, yeah. But there's other times where it's not. How I came across, I don't know, but that's what I mean. Okay, so moving on from OctaMED to Soundtracker Pro 2, and of course, look how dreamy he is. Please, don't even know who he is. So basically you have your menu system here, you have everything is on one screen basically, and you can see what's happening at all times, you know, everywhere, in all aspects, most aspects, at all times, right? So you have your disk operation here, so your song, let's load one of mine. Okay, yeah, that's one thing that annoys Rich about this, because he's like, how do you access the drives? So he's like, you know, you list and all that stuff, right? And I said, all you do is right click on parent directory, right? And it comes up with all these drives, every single sign, sorry, and device that you got on your Amiga. And he goes, oh, that's crap. How are you supposed to know that? And I'm like, well, it's one of those things, once you know, you know. He's very nitpicky about these things because he's designing right now his own like Linux interface from scratch. It's actually looking really good. You know, I have to say he's doing a brilliant job on it. But yeah, he's very like, his attention to detail on interfaces is like, you know, and also mine a little bit as well, because I studied, well, part of my course I studied HCI, Human Computer Interface. So you have that sample menu. Basically, if you're gonna just select your sample, and yeah, literally everything is here, everything that you need. Sample menu, let's go into my sample collection, which I sample all these myself. It's straightforward as anything, you know. If you want to do more to it, you click on sound and you can even tune the sample up and down, right? And then resample it if you finish tune, if you're happy with it. Literally everything, he's thought of everything with regards to this, and that, you know, I love this. I love how this works. It just like fits like a glove to me, almost. You have your MIDI controls here, turning MIDI on. You can channel distribution. Just wish he'd done MIDI out. That's why I said almost. Wish he'd done MIDI out, and I wish he'd done like at least a sync, right? Syncing to MIDI devices. And I'll just, oh my god. I'd love that. like do a hybrid Amiga Soundtracker Pro 2 and Polyend Tracker music. The actual file format on this is not the same as Protracker. It's not a standard mod format, by the way, when you save this. This is got its own proprietary format, and that you can use higher octaves, right? In this, you can go up C4, C5, even like C6, I think. I mean, they sound like absolute trash. Okay, so the more later it goes to B5. And it sounds horrendous, but you can do it, right? I think Protracker, they must put a cap on it. Sometimes certain notes sound alright. Yeah, it just sounds a bit distorted and kind of struggles with it. So, yeah, you've got that. You've got the MIDI information, and you've got, you know, it's like actually Electronscape of the SIDbox. He works through this file format, and he's the one to go for if you want to know how the file format works. He sort of reverse engineered it and tried to get it working on the SIDbox, and he's done a good job. Certain things are missing, but he's done a good job. Yeah, so, and it also saves MIDI information, things like that. You can even do, if you were to right click on the record, you can do velocity. It records the velocity, so how hard you hit the keyboard, it will, you know, the keys on the keyboard, it'll, you know, those of you who don't know what velocity is, it'll increase the volume and decrease the volume depending on the pressure. Position 1, block 11 is playing. So that, I didn't know that. There was no one to teach me that. But I did it by, I'd play mods and I'd literally just watch the tracker, and I'd love it. I'd love watching the tracker, watching the numbers. Since an early age, like 4 years old, 3 years old, 4 years old, I've loved watching VU meters, right, on hi-fis and on the tip recorders and things like that. The VU meters, I've loved them since like early childhood, right, and I love watching things move the music. Always been a thing with me, and so this is like dream for me. When it came and I saw that, I was just like, oh my god, I can see the music. I watched the tracker do its thing. I watched all the commands and how they changed the sound, how they affected the sample, how and I watched that thing, and over time I just knew. I just started like, okay, let me try one thing, let me try this, let me try that, and I started just messing around with, you know, with songs, and I realized that this is the sample number. No, I just learned it by just looking at it and messing around with it and just being alone with it, basically. It's not, as I said to that guy who said, oh, you fancy him, it's not the same as, this is not the same program as Protracker. It's a totally different program. The file format's totally different. Yeah, it works the same way because it's a tracker at the end of the day. But they've not made a new version. If they've made a new version of this, please tell me, somebody. If somebody updates this, right, and puts MIDI out, please do that. That would be a dream come true for me. Because I'm not good with programming, I'm not good with coding. If I was, this would probably be one of my projects. I've not tried Soundtracker Pro 1, I've seen it, it looks somewhat similar. It's the one that says, I remember it, it's the one that says you have the little titles of each track saying bass, percussion, melody, and, you know, on the top, it's that one. Now the other comment, right? Somebody was saying, it was on Facebook, someone was saying that, oh, I've never seen the point in creating music on the Amiga because, you know, it's just samples at the end of the day. And also he said, you know, this is the time when you need a PC and all that stuff. Because I was trying to, it was in response to my video where I was trying to connect two Amigas together to create an 8-channel Soundtracker Pro, you know. So yeah, he basically said that this is the point where you need a PC. I mean, we're in 2023, right? I already know this multi-track. I've got a Polyend Tracker, which is 8 channels, right? So practically there is no need to try and put two Amigas together. But I just want to do it because of the fun of it, because of the passion of it, right? Everyone knows this is, I've used ModPlug Tracker in 2004. That's got like 64 plus tracks, channels, tracks, whatever you want to call these things, yeah? I already know how to do more. But there's something about art. Do you know when you create like art on a canvas. You use different things. You can use oil paints, you can use different mediums, right? But in the oil paints, right, there's something called impasto, right? And what you can do is you can add texture. I can go out there and get some wood chips and mix it in the impasto and then mix the oil paint color in there and make a nice textured impasto. I'm using wood chips. One of my paintings, I used sand. I mixed sand in with impasto. And then, you know, I created the sand color, so it kind of gives that effect. Now, the fact that I used sand, something so basic, didn't pay anything for it, right? It's very primitive things to use, but that's what creates the art. And that's how I feel about my music. Putting two Amigas together with, you know, a parallel cable and you know, making them sync one another, that's part of my music. That's part of the value of the artwork. That's part of my experience with it. And yeah, with regards to the comment about, oh, Amiga's just samples. No, I don't think so. First of all, Amiga is capable of synthesis, right? You can. And a lot of these tracks, you may not realize, being an Amiga user yourself, the person said, oh, I'm a big fan of it. A lot of the games you've heard, you know, especially the earlier ones, of synthesized music, Treasure Island, Dizzy, I can think just off the top of my head. The music on that is not samples. Parasol Stars, music on that is not samples. It's synthesized. So Amiga can't do synthesis. That's the first thing wrong with that statement. Secondly, even if you do create music on the Amiga with samples, how the computer handles the samples is the thing that's different, right? Between the Amiga and anything else. Now with PC, Tracker, I created different tracks in Tracker than I did on the Amiga. They had a different feel to them, right? And on Polyend Tracker, I write different, my kind of style, not style, let's say, because everyone around me has told me that they can still recognize me in my music, no matter what I created on, but the way I write it, the way it kind of allows me to express, that is sort of, it varies. It's a little different. I actually, one of my tracks, Ethereality, I initially wrote it on Tracker, but then I tried to reinterpret it on the Amiga. It sounded completely different. There's a different environment. The environment where you are, like, or you're working in, makes a huge difference in your creativity. So no, I'm sorry, I strongly disagree. It's not just samples. If you view the life like that, I'm sorry, but you know, it's very simplistic. You know, I mean, you do you. If that's how you want to view life, that's cool. But me personally, no. It kind of sucks the excitement out of life if you think of life like that. So yeah, anyway, you do you. You have your opinion, I have mine, but that's... I still feel that strong sort of excitement. I do when I see Sound Tracker. And no, it's not because of Marco and Ellison's picture on the front. I'm talking about the tracker itself, right? Because that excitement, that nostalgia is fuel for creativity. It shows itself like that. The fact that I'm using an Amiga, that excites me. On my last album, one of my tracks was completely done in SID. And it sounds completely different to the rest of the tracks on there. It just has a different mood to it. And even though I created it on Polyend Tracker, right? I used the thrap SID along with it. And I said to myself, I'm only going to use SID, right? And I did layer it, but I, you know, one on top of the other. I created it in 3 elements and like layered the 3 together because thrap SID cannot do too many different things at once. My point is, the environment and what you're using kind of, it really makes a difference on how your creativity blossoms and you know, comes out. There's one which I want to mess around with, and that is AHX Tracker. Now this one has been created, it was created later on, Abyss Tracker 2.3D. They've made it like the setup look like somewhat like Protracker, right? What I like about this is there's no samples. Again, to you who said, oh, Amiga is just samples. No, this is not. This is synthesized proper. And this is actually inspired by SID creation and how SID music works. So you have over here, it's quite simple, but that's all like that. Instrument editor, right? Now this is exactly how you would synthesize on the old, on the Commodore 64, on the SID chips. Yeah, this is how you would do that. The attack decay and all this, and you have to know the values. I still want to learn this, and I want to create my own. Let's load something, and you'll see, right? And again, no samples here. Electric City, one of my favorites. Play it. Purely synthesized. Love this track, by the way. There you go. You have... Who says Amiga cannot do synthesis? You lie. Right, so that I want to learn. I want it to be one of my future albums. I wanted to have like a couple of songs from AHX. You know, so whoever created AHX, it was Abyss. Thank you so much, guys. Love it. To those comments, not just that one comment, but I've received other comments saying that, oh, why are you bothering with Polyend Tracker? You know, it's a, you know, you should use renoise and things like that. I've used a lot of trackers throughout the years. I've used Sound Tracker Pro 2, I've used Protracker, I've used OctaMED, I've used MsMadLemon, I've used renoise, I've used Polyend Tracker. I've gone through all this. So I know, I'm aware. Yeah, I've created music. This is one thing which I'm like, even though, you know, I stick with Soundtracker Pro, just because I'm kind of chasing that nostalgic feeling and that, you know, thingy. And now with Polyend Tracker, something very similar. I love the way it works. I don't need something as flashy as Renoise to create music. It's not about having the best tools or the best synths and the best that or this and the most expensive equipment. I paid nothing for those wood chips. I paid nothing for the sand I took from the beach. This is a little bit which I took to kind of, you know. And not only that, in my artwork, this memories of that beach. That's what art is. It's got soul, it's got feeling, and that's what is with, you know, when I create something with Amiga or different things. I don't want to create music with just one thing. I want to create music with combination of things, SID, Polyend Tracker, Amiga, and different synthesizers. Notice in my last album, I used the Cobalt 8, I used the DX7, I used this Yamaha SY22. So, you know, it's like, I'm kind of like that. I'm a bit chaotic like that, but I sort of want to create art in my chaos. Do you know what I mean? So it's like, yeah, I know I'm kind of, I feel strongly about this. So let's look at OctaMED 6. Now this is completely using Workbench intuition, right? I'm sorry, but I kind of don't like it. I don't know, Rich will completely disagree with me with this. He likes this. And I know, I can see where he's coming from. I think what Rich likes about it is the way you can customize it, because it's like everything has its own tiny little window, right? You know, depending on the size of your, what resolution you're using it at. But you can literally, you know, synth editor, you can add its own window. You can put so many windows there, but this can feel a bit cluttered to me, yeah. Me personally, I think I gravitate more towards OctaMED 5 because it feels like a bit of a hybrid sort of thing going on. It's not entirely intuition. I mean, I don't know, it might be entirely intuition, but it doesn't feel so much. It feels like it's got its own separate, version 5 seems to have its separate thing. It makes a big difference. The interface you're using, it kind of like the ease of use something has. You know, when you don't have to kind of go in menus within menus within menus to reach something, and you get it straight away. It allows more room for your creativity to flow, if you know what I mean, rather than having to like mess about just trying to get something. In the case of OctaMED 4, messing around just to freaking quit the program. You know what I mean? But so OctaMED 5 in this way feels a bit like more of a good balance between the 4 and the 6. You know, it's like everything does have its structure and everything is where it is. But then you have, you know, your synth editor, your sample editor, and then your synth editor. Right, so we've gone through the trackers on the thingy. Now Polyend Tracker, I've gone through that, right? I love how it works and all that. And again, it's quite, though that's a standalone machine by itself, right? You can understand it having like, but I'll just show you the basics on it. So everything, as you can see, let's put the brightness up because it's like sunny shining. Simple. This is the new version, new firmware 1.7. The problem is it's great, it's allowed folders in the freaking thing now, which is good, but the problem with it is that it freezes and crashes randomly. They're saying they're going to release a fix for it. Hope they do soon, because it's annoying, right? And I do a lot of creativity. I've actually created 5 tracks already, right? On for my upcoming album. So, and I've already just released another album, Paradox. You know, so it's, let's go into Paradox. I'm not going to show the new ones because they're kind of like right secret. So let's go to Paradox, one of the favorite ones, which people have been telling me they've enjoyed. So it is basically an 8-channel tracker. However, it's got some effects, like it's got the delay effect, it's got the reverb and all that. So it sounds like more than what it actually is. So it says 8 tracks there. It really sounds like you've added, you know, if you were to do it in the Amiga sense. So, you know, you can. So when you select pattern, and you see your pattern information there, song, and that's your blocks. Do you know the part in the corner in Soundtracker Pro where you sequence your tracks and things like that? That is that, basically. Sorry, that is that, basically. You know what I mean? That's the sequence part. So you're programming the sequence of your blocks. So it sounds a bit different because I did the MIDI on the final version, the sequencers. I've created like, you can hear that delay on the lead. Again, that's like adding an effect afterwards to it. So it's got built-in effects like that. I love how it works. You got your file thingy, you got your sample editor here. But the problem is, yeah, it'll stop the pattern. You can't do it all at the same time. I want to record a follow-up of my review of Polyend Tracker. My God, it's like almost 2 years now. Yeah, 2 years on or something. There's a few things that are missing. There's a few things that I can do on the Amiga that I cannot do here. Sample looping being one of them. You know, I need it sometimes. I have to do like silly long samples otherwise. There's a few things which I'd like to suggest to Polyend, right? About this. So I'm gonna do like a separate video on that, on Polyend Tracker, and what I feel that is missing on that. You know, as somebody who's got a history of trackers and, you know, creating music since the 90s. So yeah, you got that, you got a sample recorder, which is amazing, and I love carrying this thing around anywhere and thinking. I don't have the Tracker Mini. I cannot afford it. It's very expensive, but that would be even better because it's got the battery in there and you can do stereo samples with that. You know, carry it around anywhere and just record anything. You can literally, like, I think what they've done, they've taken inspiration from the what's that other one? The Dirty Wave M8. It's like a Game Boy style, you know. So, thanks so much for your likes, your shares. Do leave your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to check out my other videos and do subscribe for more. Also, I do more than create videos, so for more content, don't forget to check out my website as it contains all what I do. I update my blog fairly regularly, by the way. I'm very happy with how I've designed my website and wish to thank Rich Garbett for all the hard work and effort he's put into making it all work. Also, a big thank you goes to my top tier patrons: Rich Garbett, Axel Dominator, Electronskip UK, Aaron Metcalf, Corey Ostman, Starglider77, Mark Bosak, Starlight Minako, Chris Seblinski, and Veronica Explains. No matter what the Patreon tier, each of you who choose to support me genuinely out of the goodness of your heart deserves appreciation. Hence, the least I can do to show my thanks is list your names in my videos, regardless of tier. Thank you again to all of you who genuinely support me. I'm really touched by it. Have a lovely evening, everyone. Until next time, adios!